working with David Goldblatt was obviously a privilege. David's somebody I've met a couple of times and have enormous respect for as not just as a writer, but somebody who understands the importance of football socially.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. Have you hit that subscribe button? If not, what are you waiting for? Do it.
What is up, everyone? Welcome back to another video on Total Sport. Make sure to subscribe down below to get us to 1,000 subscribers. We're so close. But today we are joined by Alex Stewart, who is also another Tifo Football strategist for the Athletics, stuff like this. How are you, mate? You good?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. And Alex obviously saw Joe Devine's video, which has done pretty well. Thanks to everyone who's watched that. And I was just like, and one comment said, "Can you get Alex Stewart on?" So I was like, you know what? Drop him a DM. And here he is.
Only one comment, mind you. So
only one.
We're satisfying one person.
You know, whoever that was, thank you very much. Get all your friends to subscribe. So pretty much, Alex, we'll start off with how did you first start your love for football? Really, in your childhood?
Not really in my childhood, particularly. I mean, I played football at school. I was rubbish. I was a goalkeeper of limited means, but you know, it was fun and I played. It probably wasn't until I went to university I started playing more seriously, and always enjoyed it. Played a variety of different sports, but was never particularly into coaching or tactics or anything of that nature. And it was really when, in I think probably about 2012. Jonathan Wilson started publishing The Blizzard. And that was the first time that I came across football writing that was of the sort that I wanted to read, that was like how I read stuff, you know, that was published about other things. It was grown up, it was thoughtful, it was long form. And I kind of developed my interest or redeveloped my interest out of that. I then started looking at other things that Jonathan had written, which drew me to Inverting the Pyramid, obviously, which is kind of the tactics Bible, I guess. And then when I went freelance, I started blogging, writing about football on my own blog. And then when I went freelance in 2015, I guess I kind of built on that sort of interest and that style of writing, but then developed more of an interest in the tactical side of stuff.
Yeah. So one interesting thing I came across with you on your LinkedIn profile is that you actually started off as a police officer. So yeah. What led you from that to where you are now?
Yeah, it's an odd one, isn't it? So I spent almost 6 years in the Met doing a variety of different things. There wasn't any particular link between those two things. I think, you know, I left the police because I was sort of fairly disenchanted with how things were going and how it was being run. And obviously there were a lot of political pressures at the time. And I'd started writing about football almost as a relief from all of that when I was still working, just for my own pleasure, really, and playing a bit of Football Manager and that sort of stuff. It wasn't the link, insofar as there is one, is that the way that I like to watch football is about patterns. It's about movement of players, what people are doing on the pitch, that kind of thing. But there's a sense to which the spotting of patterns and the ability to recognize patterns is something that was helpful in my old job and is helpful in football. Obviously two very disparate things, but it's I suppose that's the main link. I did also police football matches, which was slightly different. Yeah, it was. I was what's called a level 2 officer, so I was kitted up for certain matches and running around after fans. Not often, it has to be said. I mean, stuff didn't happen that frequently.
No, not at all. So, leading on to Tifo Football, obviously it's been around quite a while now. So when did you first come across it, and what made you think, "Oh, I want to be a part of that"?
So it was when it was still UMaxer. I knew Joe already through a blog and a podcast that he was running called The Illustrated Game. Really liked the way that he used illustrations, not really actually to explain football at that point. They were more like almost cartoony things, or Philippe, who is also a producer with Tifo now, did these very beautiful paintings of quite abstract paintings of football grounds, that kind of thing. I went on a podcast that Joe was hosting, probably about 2013, 2014, something like that. So before I left my old job, and we, you know, got on really well. He started working for Tifo when it was Umaxit, and we ended up, our first job was sharing the social media responsibilities. I started doing some writing for them as well, largely writing about tactics, because that was the thing I was becoming more interested in. And then when Joe started producing the videos, because initially it was him that was doing it, he had the idea of me trying to write tactics videos. The first couple of tactics videos that Tifo did actually were by Jonathan, funnily enough. But Joe asked me to then start doing some of them. That seemed to work really well. It was a thing that I was interested in. And then I spent a year working for a company that was producing a coffee app, weirdly enough. So basically like a location-based thing for coffee. So when I was doing that, I was doing a lot of digital strategy. I was working with some very smart people on how to turn a digital product into something that makes revenue. And because I had this connection with Tifo and knew Joe and had met some of the guys, Seb was there as well at that point as well, it struck me that Tifo had a fantastic product, but there wasn't necessarily somebody who was responsible for driving it in a kind of business direction and coming up with strategy. And, you know, Joe would do a bit and Seb would do a bit, and it was good, but it was no one's full-time responsibility. And as somebody who had written for the company and worked with the company and knew the people involved, but also had just spent a year doing this, I thought, make me a job, basically. And they did. So that was quite lucky. But it was great because when you're trying to monetize a digital product, if you can have an understanding of how it's made, and ideally even be part of the making of things, then it makes it that much easier to explain what you're doing and to have an understanding of the way that the company can develop and everything, because you're part of it. You know, you're not coming in from external and thinking, oh, we should do this, and this, because, you know, I'd been involved for long enough that I saw what the strengths were. So, and now we are where we are.
Exactly. So what sort of strategies did you try and implement when you first came in, and have they come to fruition since?
I think the honest answer to that is that a lot of the things that we were talking about there were two main strands. Obviously, we wanted to monetize the content as much as we could, not just relying on YouTube ad revenue. And Neil Clerk, who founded Tifo, and I worked together on that. From the creative side of things, obviously Joe took the lead on that because that's his brilliance. But I was able to kind of pitch in with certain things on that. And it was always very collaborative in that regard, and continues to be. We're still talking about some of those things now. I mean, with obviously having joined the Athletic, which is a fantastic opportunity for us, certain of the things that we were looking at doing back then, we may now be able to realize, which is great. And also that's kind of taken away the commercial necessity of trying to keep a company like Tifo going on a month-to-month basis, which was really difficult. You know, it wasn't, YouTube is a difficult marketplace. It's quite an immature marketplace compared with podcasts, for example. So trying to convince brands of the utility of advertising on YouTube, and particularly with the kind of sentiment marketing where you're talking about, you know, the brand equity of Tifo and what that confers to viewers about the associated brands, that is a hard thing to do on YouTube. We are now in a situation where we're very fortunate that is a less pressing concern for us. And, you know, our colleagues at The Athletic are very keen for us to focus on producing really, really good videos, which, you know, I hope is what we're currently doing.
Yeah. So talk to us about sort of the the changes that have happened with joining the Athletic. What sort of the main changes have you seen with Tifo?
Well, we've managed to employ Alice, who is now basically the kind of coordinator of production. That bolsters the production team, but it also means that there's a kind of greater degree of continuity between the videos. There's somebody who sits above that process and works very closely with the producers to ensure that the videos are doing certain things. It's meant we've been able to experiment more in terms of how we put material forwards. We've started using more animation as opposed to straight illustration in the videos. And all of that stuff has been possible because we've joined the Athletic. I think in terms of the content itself, obviously we now have access to a world-class team of journalists. So sometimes that's, you know, in the kind of very obvious way, we can adapt a piece that someone's written. But it also means for me as somebody who's writing I don't know, if I'm writing a tactics video on Atalanta, I can drop James Horncastle a WhatsApp and say, is there anything I'm missing here? And that kind of access is obviously fantastic for us. We can leverage that on podcasts as well. So we get people coming in and talking on the podcasts. They have an input into the videos. And then I suppose as well, the Sensible Transfer series that we've just done. So we had 9 videos going out on the channel. We've had, I think, I want to say 12 podcasts and input into 27 editorial pieces. So that was run across the whole platform. So on the Athletics editorial side and on the app, but also on our podcast channels and on our YouTube channel. Clearly that's something that would have been impossible prior to joining the Athletics. So that kind of larger scale of project is really exciting for us to be part of.
Yeah. So what's really interesting is it's sort of come full circle for you, because you're someone who, you said you loved the longer form pieces, and the Athletic specializes in that, really. So do you think it's sort of like a perfect fit for yourself?
Oh, completely. I mean, I was a subscriber to the Athletic for about 6 months prior to them even beginning conversations with us, because I enjoyed reading about particularly ice hockey, oddly enough, which I think Joe mentioned on your conversation with him, that I have a nerdy interest in ice hockey stats. But it's, I think one of the reasons that it worked was, so we started the partnership as a kind of commercial partnership. They were sponsoring the podcast and sponsoring some videos. But it felt very quickly like they were a company that wanted to talk about sport in the way that we wanted to talk about it. And that obviously we then watched the launch of the UK site in August of last year with some interest. That was the point at which we started working with them commercially. And yeah, it was clear with the people that they'd recruited, the kind of material that they were putting out, and also the stuff they'd been doing prior, not in football, that we saw stuff in very, very similar ways. You know, we have a different medium by and large. We use video and illustration and animation, and they use the written word, but the essential premise, I think, is so similar that it made a lot of sense for us. And I think, you know, in terms of joining a larger company with a bigger footprint and more clout, there probably isn't anybody out there that was more appropriate for us to do that with than the Athletic.
Yeah, definitely. So for yourself, in your time at Tifo, what's been your favorite video to create or to watch, and why? What was good about it?
Ooh, good question. So I think to watch would probably be the climate change video that we did recently. I think it was, obviously it's a hugely important subject, but it was a really impactful video, brilliantly made. Working with David Goldblatt was obviously a privilege. David's somebody I've met a couple of times and have enormous respect for, as not just as a writer, but somebody who understands the importance of football socially and politically, and writes beautifully about that. And I think it's really cool that Tifo, you know, we've got, 830,000 subscribers now. I think we've just had probably our best month ever in terms of views. And we are in a fairly unique position to be able to put material like that out online and know that a lot of people will watch it and pay attention to it, which is really good, because there's lots of stuff out there about football, but sometimes you need to focus on these important wider issues or show how football relates to something like climate change in order to grab people's attention. I think in terms of the stuff that I've done personally, I don't know. I mean, the fun for me is as much, sometimes more actually, in the research and the writing of the videos. So anything where I get to look at a tactical, an interesting tactical team, like an Atalanta, for example, or come up with something, notice something that's interesting, and then make a video about that. I have relatively free range from Joe, which is great. So I can come to him and say, I think we should do a video on X or Y, and he more or less tolerates that, which is good for me. So and then it's handed over to the illustrators, and they do a brilliant job in making it all intelligible, and hopefully enjoyable to the audience as well.
For yourself, what is it in particular that draws you towards the tactical side of the game? Is it something sort of romantic about it for you, or is it purely just stony faced?
Yeah, there's no. I think the honest answer is there is little romance in it. I do find the evolution of tactics really, really interesting, and I think that there's something fascinating in the fact that certain tactical trends pop up at particular times, not necessarily always in the same place either. And I think it can be quite similar to movements in art, for example, or literature, where certain trends develop in disparate places. People start doing something because it's new and it's exciting and it's addressing a problem, and then that proliferates out. That's something that I do find fascinating. I suppose there's a slight romance in that, but no, I just like watching what's happening, and I'm not that interested in who the people are, and I'm not that interested in why the game matters. I like to be able to just see the patterns, see that there's this line here is created for this reason, or this guy's moved here for this, or this is a thing that keeps happening and keeps happening. And I don't know why that interests me. I mean, like I say, I've always been interested in patterns, and I've always been interested in spotting those sorts of things, whatever it is. And I found an aspect of football that means I don't have to focus on, there's loads and loads of people who write brilliantly and emotively about the nuances of a game and the ebb and flow of the emotion and the crowd, and why a particular fixture has significance. Fortunately, football's such a broad canvas that there's space for people like me who don't really care who wins, but want to see a really interesting man-oriented pressing system.
So finally, mate, just to really forecast of the future, what is your plans for Tifo Football? Is it purely continuation, or is there any sort of outlandish goals that you'd like to achieve?
I think I don't think any of our goals are outlandish, because I genuinely think that what's been created, particularly by Joe, but the whole team, is something that is a very sustainable form of success. And so to be able to continue to grow that, to be able to reach a wider audience, get more people interested in the way that we talk about football, I think that's obviously a goal, but I think it's also an achievable one. I think in terms of, we have some projects in the pipeline at the moment, which are very exciting. I think, as Joe mentioned before as well, there's always the opportunity to expand the way that we talk about things into new sports verticals. I would always be very conscious of, and I know Joe would be as well, that we're able to do that, maintaining the quality that we try to set out in Tifo. So it would be the sort of thing where we would, we'd want to ensure that we were talking about whichever sport it was with the same degree of credibility. Because that's important. That's ultimately people come to the channel because hopefully we're mostly right about stuff. And yes, we present it in an engaging way and in a way that makes it easy to digest. But fundamentally, it's true and it's accurate, as opposed to being speculative or news cycly or what have you. And even something like sensible transfers, which is kind of speculative. We lay it out in such a way as to say, there are reasons why clubs should be looking at these players, and this is what those reasons are. We're not saying so and so might be linked with so and so. But yeah, I think it's just about maintaining what we do currently as well as we can and improving that, making the videos better, possibly making them longer, trying these new projects, which will happen in the next few months. I can't really say any more than that, but they're exciting. And then possibly, different sports. But there's, the Tifo style can be rolled out into anything. There's no reason that, providing we secure the right sort of insight from people or we learn it, there's no reason we couldn't do it for NFL or ice hockey or whatever. Yeah,
absolutely. And that's a great way to finish. Alex, thank you very much for joining us on Total Sport. Where can we find you on social medias, mate?
You can find me on Twitter at AFH Stewart, and obviously Tifo. If you follow me, you'll mostly get like Killing Eve gifs and references to Hungarian second division midfielders. So if that's your thing, great. If it's not, I would just suggest that you follow at Tifo Football _, because that's much more mainstream and sensible.
Exactly. Thank you very much, mate. And all you lot at home, make sure you subscribe, get us to 1K. It's so close. It's so close. I bet you can do it. Alex, I'm sure we'll retweet and get all of you to come and join the Total Sport family. Thank you very much for watching, guys, and we will see you next time.